Listeners, NerdWallet wants you to let them do the work for you. Looking for auto insurance? The Nerds will match you with top providers in your area in just a few questions. So getting the right rate for you is as simple as going to nerdwallet.com. After all, letting NerdWallet do the work is more than smart. It's genius. Not all applicants will qualify for the lowest monthly payments. NerdWallet Insurance Services Incorporated. California resident license number OK92033. DirecTV is a better way to watch whatever you want to watch. We all know the frustration and confusion that comes from endlessly scrolling, trying to find your favorite shows. DirecTV brings together your live TV and apps into one home screen, helping you avoid the hassle of plugging in passwords again and again or wasting time searching for what to watch across platforms. With DirecTV, you spend more time watching and less time searching for your show. Sign up for DirecTV today at directtv.com.
Paying attention to your mental nutrition. You know, if you watch sad movies and read sad books and hang around sad people, the likely is, you're going to be sad. And I think the antidepressant drugs are just no match for these lifestyle interventions. Anxiety, which is also rampant, the most effective anti-anxiety treatment I found is a simple breathing technique.
Hey guys, it's Rach. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And I have a favor, which sounds kind of harsh if we just met, but I'm assuming that most of you have been a part of this community for a hot minute. And so I gotta ask, are you subscribed to the podcast? Subscribing to the podcast you listen to regularly is one of the best things that you can do for hosts like me. It helps to support the show and the staff that works on it. It ensures that you never miss an episode when we drop a new one. And here's the cool thing about subscribing. If you do it and then you hate this show, just unsubscribe. It's one click away. In the meantime, if you're listening, we would so appreciate it if you would just tap that button and make it official. Hi y'all, it's Rachel. Welcome back to a new episode of the podcast and another in our Mastermind series. And I just have to shout out, we've actually had quite a few of you call into the voicemail hotline lately just to tell us that you love these episodes. So truly, thank you. We work so hard on this show, especially producer Jack and I. So he sent me a note. He's like, man, we're getting a lot of good feedback on the masterminds. And it just made us both feel super good. We really want to create content that you guys find helpful. And we like it when we get sort of the best of. So glad to hear that these are working for y'all as well. And today's topic is really fantastic and filled with great advice. If you have never listened to a mastermind before, you're in for a treat. These are some of the best conversations I've had over the last 8 years of doing this show with the leaders on the subject. So today we're talking about happiness, or more specifically, the science of happiness, and we're going to hear from some of the best. First off, Gretchen Rubin, best-selling author and host of Happier with Gretchen Rubin. She breaks down how our habits make us feel truly content. We're also going to hear from Arthur Brooks, Harvard professor and author of How to Build a Happy Life, Dr. Andrew Weil, a pioneer in holistic health. That one's about understanding how our physical well-being impacts our emotional state. And because happiness isn't just about what's in our heads, but also our relationships, I'm pulling in some wisdom from Dr. Emily Morse, who's the host of Sex with Emily, on how connection and intimacy play a huge role in our overall happiness. So whether you're feeling a little stuck, a little stressed, or you're just looking for practical ways to bring more joy into your everyday life, this episode is for you.
So I was finishing up my book that was called 40 Ways to Look at JFK, and I'm sure you know this from your own writing. When you're finishing up a book, but it hasn't hit the shelves yet, there's kind of this open space because your job is kind of done and the next stage of your job has not yet come. And so I had a little moment of reflection, and I was stuck on a city bus in the pouring rain, and I looked out the window and I thought, what do I want from life anyway? I had one of these rare opportunities for reflection. And I thought, I want to be happy. And I thought, I say that, but I don't spend any time thinking about whether I am happy or whether I could be happier. And I thought, I should have a happiness project. And that was the phrase that came to me. And I was like, all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. And I did what I always do, which is I ran to the library and got this giant stack of book about happiness, because I was like, ancient philosophy, contemporary scientists, pop culture, memoirs, novels, like what can you make yourself happier? What is happiness? Um, and so I decided that what I would do for my happiness project is take a year, because a year feels short enough to be manageable, but long enough that you could actually achieve something measurable, and pick 12 themes of things that, given my research, I thought were likely to make me happier and that were priorities in my own life. And each month I would, because I'm a systematic person, I would focus on something like work or friendship or love or, whatever it might be, and give myself a handful of concrete, practical, manageable resolutions that would actually potentially make a difference. Because I think a lot of times you read about happiness and you're like, oh, it seems so abstract. It's not that I disagree with it, but I just don't even understand how to relate this to my own life. So I was trying to take these big abstract principles and figure out ways to kind of make them happen in my life. And then I just kept saying, like, and then so the happiness project is basically the report of what I tried, why I tried what I tried, and what I found when I tried.
Yes.
And so it's I was sort of my own guinea pig. Well, one of the things that was really interesting to me and has become more and more obvious and true for me as I've gone through my subsequent research is that, there is no magic one size fits all solution. And people want to say, like, the secret to life is to get up at 6 a.m. and go running first thing, or, and or everyone should have 100 friends, and it's like, well, maybe we're all different, and we're happiest when we have a life that reflects our own interests, our own values, our own temperament, our own character. And the more that I tried to unknow myself and shape my life around what was true about me instead of some fantasy self or the way I assumed I should be or what other people expected me to be, then I became happier. So that one thing that like we each have to figure it out for ourselves, that everyone's happiness project would be different,
Hmm.
um, was really kind of important for me, because I was like, well, just tell me the best things to do and I'll do them. And it's like, well, nobody can write that list. Only you can write that list for yourself. This is a kind of a well-established psychological principle that we think that, or we assume that we act because of the way we feel, but to a very large degree we feel because of the way we act. So it's like your brain is thinking, wow, there's so much yelling and slamming of doors around here, I guess we're really angry, and then that amplifies your feeling of anger. And so what this means is you can use this to your advantage. So, like, let's say you're feeling very sluggish. If you act with more energy, if you walk more quickly, if you talk with more energy, you will start to feel more energetic. Or if you're feeling really shy and you're like, okay, I'm just going to pretend to be really friendly and outgoing, you will start to feel more outgoing. Um, if you are feeling very resentful or angry at someone in your life and you think, okay, I'm just going to show my gratitude for this person, you will actually start to boost feelings of gratitude. Or, like, don't wait until you feel like kissing your sweetheart, because just go ahead and kiss, and from the kiss
Yeah.
comes the feeling of affection. So this is a lot of times we feel much like our emotions are just happening to us, but this is one of the many ways where we can actually direct um our emotional state. I think it's very hard to just like sit there and change your emotional state from the inside. So I'm always looking for, like, what can you do on the outside to go in?
Yes.
And acting the
Yes.
way you want to feel is a way to do something. It's you can't make yourself feel loving, but you can, or at least I can't. But I can make myself kiss my husband. And then if kissing my
Hmm.
husband makes me feel loving, well, then problem solved. So the four tendencies is a personality profile that I came up with, coming out of my book Better Than Before, which is all about habit change, to try to explain certain habit patterns in why people could and couldn't successfully change their habits. I was trying to understand that, and I kind of stumbled on this framework. And it looks at how people meet expectations or resist expectations, which sounds super boring, but ends up being actually quite juicy.
Hmm.
um, And there is a quiz. If you go to quiz.gretchenrubin.com, you can take the free quiz. It's like 11 questions. 2 million people have taken this quiz, and it will spit out an answer and it'll give you a report on yourself. But a lot of people don't even need to take the quiz because I'll just briefly describe it and people instantly know what they are. So it's whether you're an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. Those are the four. So we all face two kinds of expectations: outer expectations, like a work deadline or a request from a friend, and inner expectations, my own desire to keep a New Year's resolution, my own desire to do a better job of washing my face every night. That's my own inner expectation. So
Yes.
upholders regularly meet outer and inner expectations. So they keep the work deadline, they keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. They want to know what other people expect from them, but their expectations for themselves are just as important. So their motto is discipline is my freedom. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if it makes sense. So they are making everything an inner expectation. If it meets their inner standard, they will do it, no problem. If it fails their inner standard, they will push back. They resist anything arbitrary, inefficient, unjustified. They always need to know why. And their motto is, I'll comply if you convince me why. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And I got my insight into this tendency. This was sort of the origin of the whole tendencies framework, was when a friend said to me, the thing that's weird is I know I'm happier when I exercise. And when I was in high school, I was on the track team and I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? Well, when she had a
Yep.
team and a coach expecting her to show up, no problem. But when she was trying to go on her own, it's a struggle. So obligers need outer accountability to meet those inner expectations. So their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me. Then finally, rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do, anything they choose to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they're very likely to resist. And typically, they don't even like to tell themselves what to do. Like, they wouldn't sign up for a 10 a.m. spin class on Saturday because they're going to think, I don't know what I want to. I just want to wake up on Saturday and see what I feel like doing. And the fact somebody's expecting me to show up is going to annoy me. And their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I.
Wow.
So those are the four.
And what are you?
I'm an upholder. Better Than Before is my book about habit change. And what I do is I identify the 21 strategies that we can use to make or break habits. And sometimes people are like, 21 is too many. Like, give me 5. But actually, it's good to have 21 because some of them work really well for some people, but not for other people. So you want to know everything that you can choose from. So you can really cherry pick the ones that are the ones that you respond to best. And so it's like, okay, like the strategy of abstaining. So for people who are facing strong temptation, some people do really, like me, do really well when we give something up altogether. It's easier for us to have none than to have a little bit. But then some people do better when they have a little bit or they have something sometimes, and they get kind of panicky and rebellious if they give something up altogether. So the strategy of abstaining is a very, very powerful strategy for some people. And then for other people, it's not effective at all. So it's kind of like, is this on your list or off your list? And maybe you've never tried it. So try it and see if it helps you. You will either find it like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to abstain than I ever knew. It sounds hard, but it's actually easier if you're an abstainer. And that's really true. Or you're like, no, this is kind of like making me wig out. This is not my way. And then you're like, okay, well, now you know something about yourself. Abstaining doesn't work for you. And then some of them, like the strategy of convenience, strategy of inconvenience, very powerful strategies that are basically universal, or the strategy of other people. We're all influenced by other people's strategies. So some of them are universal, but then some of them are more some people have an affinity to more than others. One of the strategies is called the strategy of foundation, and it talks about like the 4 habits that are kind of at the core of self-mastery. And self-mastery is something that we want a lot of, and you write about this all the time in your own vocabulary. Like, we want to be able to meet our aims for ourselves. We want to keep our promises to ourselves. We want to like set our aims in the right places so that we, make ourselves happier, healthier, more productive, more creative. And the strategy of foundation is to get enough sleep, to get some exercise, which is not like an hour spin class, it's like a 20-minute walk. To eat right, which means like don't let yourself get too hungry. Weirdly, a lot of times people eat too much because they've gotten too hungry. So you skip breakfast, you skip lunch, and then you eat everything in the vending machine. Or
Yeah.
And then also, and this led to my book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, was to create order, and I was very surprised by that the degree to which people felt like if I get control over the stuff in my life, I feel more in control of myself, which is kind of irrational, but it's a useful illusion. But that often it's like, imagine yourself you're trying to eat healthfully and you walk into a kitchen. If you walk into a kitchen where everything's put away and everything's wrapped up and the cookies are on a high shelf and the cabinets are closed and the counters are clean and the lights are off, and you walk in there at 10 p.m., you're going to be less likely to stick your hand into a bag of potato chips than if you walk in there and there's like stuff everywhere and there's dishes in the sink and the potato chip bag is just open on the counter and the leftovers haven't been put in the fridge yet. It's just easier to like just go in there. You don't have that set like your environment isn't supporting your self-mastery. So
Absolutely.
those are the four. I think if you get those, and of course people will be like, yeah, but my whole problem is I can't form the habit of getting enough sleep. That's what the rest of the book is about. But if you can get these four things nailed down, you've made major, major progress.
I think you guys know this, but in case you don't, my happy place is on the beach. Actually, that's not enough. My happy place is on the beach with an iced coffee in my hand. What a vibe. There are a lot of beaches out there, but there's only one people call the beach. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, is made up of 14 coastal communities and 60 miles of sunny beaches. Together, they create a place that makes you feel like you belong. Shine and dine in a foodie haven with oceanfront patios, fresh seafood, low country classics, and southern favorites. Plus, my favorite, you can listen to live music any day of the year, outside at laid-back beach bars, at world-renowned theaters, or right on the boardwalk. You belong at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Plan your trip to the beach at visitmyrtlebeach.com. Look, everyone knows that toilet paper is not created equal. Not all rolls are the same. Some are too soft. Some, can we say, sort of crumble, if you know what I'm saying. Then other toilet paper is so strong that it can actually hurt. And let's not even talk about the toilet paper that is so thin, it doesn't get the job done. Angel Soft is soft and strong and always affordable. Come on, life is too short. There's too much going on. I don't want to have to overthink this. So pick up a pack of Angel Soft in the toilet paper aisle of your nearest retailer. That's Angel Soft, soft and strong. Simple.
Happiness is hard for me. It's not like horrible. It's not like nobody needs to, call 911, but it's not, I'm lower in positive affect and higher in negative affect than a lot of people.
Meaning that you tend to gravitate more towards negativity?
Yeah.
Or pessimism?
Well, it's not even pessimism. It's melancholia, as they used to say in the Middle Ages.
Yes.
It's just kind of sort of a blue outlook. And look, I come from gloomy parents and gloomy grandparents, and half of your baseline happiness is genetic. We actually know this from identical twin studies where identical twins are separated at birth and adopted into separate families. So it's a statistical test. It's not done on purpose. That would be unethical, obviously.
Except for that one documentary with the triplets.
Yeah. Oh,
Have
right.
you seen that one?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Really upsetting. Sorry.
I know. What, you mean the three identical strangers? That one?
Yes.
Yeah. The three brothers?
Yes. And
super heavy.
Yeah.
Super heavy.
Yeah.
I know. And it turns out that they all have the same set of psychiatric conditions, et cetera, because these things are largely inherited.
Yeah.
Between 40 and 80% of every personality characteristic is genetic, and your baseline mood is half genetic. And so that means it's super important to understand that so you can manage your genetics. I mean, half of your tendency toward alcoholism and drug abuse is genetic too.
Yeah, for sure.
But all that means is that you need better habits. If you've got a proclivity toward it, I've got this super technology for turning that to zero. It's called don't drink.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true for your happiness. If it turns out you've got gloomy parents, you should study happiness so that you can have the right kind of habits. And so I, realizing that maybe a little later than I should have in my 40s, I'm like, I'm going to turn my toolkit on this thing. Well, it's my wife. She's like, don't you have a PhD? Why aren't you using it, for something useful, like not making me miserable?
Yeah.
And so I actually turned the whole toolkit toward trying to understand what kind of a strategy I could put together for my own life so that I could live happier and share these ideas with other people. And I changed my career completely. I was a CEO of a think tank, a big nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C., and I quit my job. And
At what age were you?
I took that job when I was 44 and I quit when I was 55. And in the last 7 years of that, I was writing a personal research-based science plan for getting happier for me. And I had this big envelope and notes and, notebooks. And Esther, my wife, found it. And she's like, this is a book. It's not the kind of stuff I write books about. She said, I think somebody might be interested in this. Yeah. And I published it. It was From Strength to Strength about how you can get happier as the years go by. And it turned out to be something that people wanted to read. And I became so enthusiastic about it. I said, this is not right for me to keep doing something else and have this be my personal plan. I want to write, speak, and teach about this for literally the rest of my life. I rewrote my personal mission statement, which is I want to use science and ideas to lift people up and bring them together in bonds of happiness and love. That's what I want to do, and I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. And so I left in 2019, and I've been teaching at Harvard and writing in the Atlantic and writing books and talking about the thing that people really want the most, which is getting happier.
Is the data skewed in any direction for men who are over 40 versus women who are over 40?
There are differences for sure. Traditionally, men and women have had happiness differences. Traditionally, women are happier than men, is what we find in almost every category. So if you look at marriage, you find that married women are happier than married men, that single women are happier than single men. Widowed women are way happier than widowed men. It's like my wife looked at that one, she's like, huh. The only group of women that tend to be less happy are divorced women who have kids in the home, because it's incredibly stressful. So your life has more and more and more meaning, but less and less and less enjoyment. And that's one of the reasons in your 30s and 40s it can be so difficult, and moment-to-moment happiness can be hard to come by. That's one of the reasons. And, it's funny because, I remember in those years, my wife did a lot more than I did in bringing up the kids because I was always working. I was running a company or whatever. But I tried to be home as much as possible. And it was stressful. It really was stressful. And then it's weird because they grew up. Now I'm a grandfather.
Are you really?
Uh-huh.
How's that?
Different.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's weird. It's like, it's better.
Yeah, I'm sure you could give them back to somebody.
I know. It's really, really great. And I didn't sort of think that was going to happen, but of course it does because they grow up. And my kids got married young. I have my 25 and 23-year-old sons are both married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my 20-year-old daughter's not married yet.
Yeah.
But who also is adopted, by the way.
Cool.
Like your youngest.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. But it's a different kind of a sensation. But I'm more conscious of the fact that that's going to go fast. Mm-hmm. So it's because there's less pressure. And so there's more moment-to-moment happiness and more meaning. Pleasure is this limbic phenomenon. It's this neurophysiological phenomenon. It's a signal to you that it's going to help you survive and pass on your genes, but it will never lead to happiness because it's fleeting.
Pleasure never brings happiness.
It does not. What you need is pleasure plus people plus memory. So, for example, if there's something that gives you pleasure but you're alone, it's a problem because that will lead to addiction and won't lead to happiness.
Whoa, that's so good.
Yeah, and so that's why Anheuser-Busch doesn't do an ad for beer that shows a guy pounding a 12-pack alone in his apartment. Because that's pleasure, and that will not bring that guy happiness.
Right.
But in the ad, the guy is drinking a beer with his brother and friends, and they're having a great time and loving each other on a fishing trip and making a memory.
Yes.
Pleasure plus people plus memory equals enjoyment, and that leads to happiness.
Oh my God. I actually didn't know this is something that could be broken down in this way, but obviously it can.
Yeah. These are the equations. I do this on all the components of happiness because my job is to teach people how to get more of it. And so you can't just be like, it's a thing. You can't be really philosophical about it. You got to be very specific about it. And each one of the macronutrients of happiness has a formula like this, and you can check yourself to know whether you've got the right strategy in your life.
And then is it as simple as just add more of those types of moments?
Well, yeah. So most people, I can usually diagnose what's going wrong in people's lives. If they have lots and lots of pleasure, but not enough people and memories in their life, I can actually say you're going toward addiction. You don't need to get rid of these sources of pleasure. You need to dial them down and put in more opportunities to be sociable, to be in communion with other people, and to be more conscious of what you're doing such that you can be engaging the prefrontal cortex of your brain and not just your lizard brain. Wow. Lizard brain says, beer feel good,
Yeah.
right? And that's not the way to consume it. Now, some people, they will wire their brains, their dopaminergic pathways, the neuromodulators in their brain, so that they have to hit the pleasure lever again and again and again and again. And those are the people who have to stop doing that and to not use that source of pleasure ever again, because they get, frankly, too good at it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of neuroscience that goes into this whole thing too. A strategy of adding as opposed to subtraction.
Right.
Now, there are a lot of cases you have to subtract. I mean, if people eat to excess and it's really bad for their bodies, then they need to actually tighten up their diet for
Right.
sure. But that's kind of obvious.
Right.
The way to think about it in a way that's not punitive and that's not negative is to say, I have a rule, except under extraordinary circumstances, I never eat alone. I don't eat alone. Now, some people live alone. So what are you going to do? You know, I saw this book called Microwave Cooking for One.
Oh,
I almost
God.
started crying when I heard it.
Oh,
It was like,
no.
but I get
At
it.
least use the stove.
I know. I'm alone a lot because I'm on the road and I'm not always traveling with, and you know what it's like when you're on the road alone. And there's sometimes when it's just really, really refreshing to go to a restaurant and eat and think and, et cetera. But as a rule, I'm not gonna eat the most delicious foods by myself. I'm gonna have a rule of eating with other people, such that it is a social experience. And when I'm doing it, I'm gonna be doing it while doing something memorable. Yeah. I'm gonna have a conversation that's memorable. So add these rules to it, and it will change your life. You don't have to be on some sort of crazy, subtractive, limiting diet, because those things never work.
Right.
95% of diets don't work. And there's a reason for that too. I mean, we actually understand the neuroscience of how that works, not just the lipid profiles, et cetera, but when the scale's going down, the benefit is higher than the cost of not eating what you like. But when you hit your goal, your reward is never eating what you like ever again for the rest of your life. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And so the whole point is you have to change your orientation toward the source of the pleasure, whereas drinking or intimacy with your partner, or what you're actually doing with your eating habits, or if you're going to Vegas, don't go to Vegas by yourself.
Right.
Don't sit in front of a slot machine by yourself. You're hitting the dopamine circuit in your brain again and again and again because you want that pleasure reward.
Yeah.
And it's not going to bring you happiness. It's going to bring you misery.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists create connectivity solutions that change the way we work, live, and play. Like Kunle, a Comcast engineer who is focused on revolutionizing the in-home Wi-Fi experience today and for the next generation. Kunle builds powerful Xfinity Wi-Fi devices that deliver a fast, reliable connection with capacity to connect hundreds of high-bandwidth devices at once, and next-level latency for the applications of the future, like augmented and virtual reality and cloud gaming. Learn more at ComcastCorporation.com/Wi-Fi.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, going to therapy, it's a big investment. And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about time and energy and emotions. But if you're going to put this much effort into taking care of your physical health, it stands to reason that you should put just as much effort into making sure your mental health is great too. So let's talk numbers. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, and that adds up. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. Therapy should feel accessible to everyone, not just a luxury. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/Rach to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Rach.
Paying attention to your mental nutrition. If you watch sad movies and read sad books and hang around sad people, the likely is, you're going to be sad. And I think the antidepressant drugs are just no match for these lifestyle interventions. Anxiety, which is also rampant, the most effective anti-anxiety treatment I found is a simple breathing technique that's free, uses no devices. It's much more effective and much safer than the drugs that we use to treat anxiety.
Yeah.
In my clinical practice, I'd say for every prescription that I've written for a pharmaceutical drug, I've probably given out 40 or 50 recommendations for botanicals. And in the time that I was doing that, I have not seen a single adverse reaction to any plant product that I've recommended. I don't know whether you're aware of how common and severe adverse drug reactions are.
No, tell us.
It's estimated that, okay, listen to this, just in the hospitalized population in the United States, there are between 200,000 and 400,000 deaths a year directly related to drugs. And it's not mistakes. This is the right dose of the right drug for the right indication for the right patient. And hundreds of thousands of people die each year just in hospitals.
Wow.
You can count on the fingers of one hand fatalities from taking herbal medicine, and usually those are mistakes. Something's been mislabeled, and very, very rare. But they're always like front page stories about the dangers of using
Why do you
natural
think that
products.
is?
And, some years ago, I had dinner with a man. He was Austrian who had worked as the technical advisor to a number of herbal manufacturers, and he'd been all around the world. He said that in the English-speaking countries, so it was Canada, U.S., Australia, New Zealand, there was a fear of nature that was not present elsewhere. He said, for example, in German-speaking Europe, people have a very friendly attitude toward nature and much more willingness to accept things. So this seems to be something peculiar to our culture. It's finally changing. I had arguments for years with pharmacists and doctors and pharmacologists about the differences between plant drugs and isolated chemicals, and none of them could see what I was talking about. Now that has begun to change. Substances that have high abuse potential and no therapeutic potential. I mean, total nonsense. The psychedelics, not ketamine, but the true psychedelics, you can't kill people with them. You can't say that about any medical drug that we use. They are probably, on the physical level, the safest of all drugs we know. And as for therapeutic potential, you've seen all the studies coming out, about PTSD and OCD and drug-resistant depression. There's tremendous therapeutic potential, but still these things are imprisoned in Schedule 1, and we've got to get them out of there. That will take change by Congress. The last I checked, the only other country in the world that allowed direct-to-consumer advertising of pharmaceutical drugs was New Zealand. Only 2 countries in the world.
Wow.
And I don't know even how that slipped in. It came in during the Clinton administration. I don't remember any debate on it. When I talk to general audiences or audience of physicians, I tell them all, write your Congress people and demand an end to direct-to-consumer advertising. It's been a disaster for medical practice and an enormous boon to pharmaceutical companies. You want to have a plan for how to wean off it, and you don't start doing that until you have other things in place, like breathing exercises for anxiety, for example, or exercise and nutrition for depression. It's great to find an integratively trained physician. Our center has now graduated almost 3,000 physicians from very intensive training. They're in practice all over the country. So I recommend going to our website, which is awcim.org, for Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And there's a Find a Practitioner link, and you can look up your state or city or specialty and find one of our graduates. That's my first recommendation. And then also look at my website, drweil.com, or my books. I have a book called Spontaneous Happiness, which is about mental health and integrative approaches to treating mental health. I also have a book called Mind Over Meds, which looks at the medications that I think are most misused and overused, and in each category gives you examples of what you can do instead of that. And I'm not opposed to the use of medication, but if you need to use it, you want to start with the lowest dose of the least potent agent, and you only want to do that in the context of a comprehensive lifestyle approach. I have an early book called Spontaneous Healing, which is about the body's potential. And I told the story there that this is a long time ago, but I was on the way driving back from the Pacific Northwest. I stopped at a friend's house in Olympia, Washington. It was at night. He had a hot tub that I got in, and I'm usually very careful about hot tubs that I get in. This looked a little sketchy to me. But anyway, I soaked in it, and about 24 hours later, I got a a sore swelling on my upper arm. And over the next few days, it got bigger and it hurt more. And then I got a few more of them. And I finally got home. And this is a bacterial infection. I knew what it was. It's an organism called Pseudomonas. This is called hot tub folliculitis, and it's not easy to treat. And then it spread to my face, and which made me really alarmed. And I was really panicked. And my then wife said that I should call a mutual friend who had just graduated from a course in guided imagery. And I said, what is guided imagery going to do for a bacterial infection? Anyway, I called her, this woman, Marilyn, and she said she was willing to do a session with me on the phone. So I remember cradling the receivers before cell phones, and she was talking me through this. She said to go to pick the lesion that was bothering most, which was one on my cheek. And she said, listen to it, see what do you see there? And I said, well, it seems like a mass of angry red energy. And she says, and what is it trying to tell you? And I said, well, it's telling me that it can't come out. And my thought was you have to put heat and squeeze these things. She said it can't come out that way, that the body has to absorb it. My wife said that as I was talking on the phone, she could see a physical change in this. That it looked less red. The next morning, it all disappeared. I use a lot of olive oil, which I think is a very healthy, dietary fat. I eat salmon and sardines and things like that for omega-3 fatty acids.
Are you eating that every day? Are you eating those fish every day?
No, but not every day. Maybe 3 times a week, something like that. I eat a lot of vegetables. I grow a lot of vegetables in my garden, and I don't eat as much fruit as I do vegetables. And I really try to avoid processed and manufactured food, which I think is what's doing most of us in. I think it's worth listening to what people do and maybe try them out. I think it's good to be experimental. But as general recommendations, I think it is important to get good rest and sleep. Dreaming, as I said, is an important part of good sleep. I think that paying attention to what you eat, and the overarching rule is that try to avoid refined, processed, and manufactured food.
If someone doesn't know what that means, Dr. Weil, will you explain
It's
that?
everything in the middle of supermarkets, as opposed to what's around the edge.
Yes, that's so good.
And you want to eat things, as close to the way nature produces them as possible.
Absolutely.
One rule that I would recommend, and I think especially important for kids, is to try to avoid sugary drinks. And that's not just soda; it's also fruit juice, energy drinks, all of that. That would be a good one to try to eliminate. They're not good for us.
Yeah.
I think getting physical activity is really important. I don't think there's one size that fits all. Walking is a very good form of physical activity, that works for many people. You don't have to work out with a trainer, but that's one possibility. I think learning and practicing some method or methods of neutralizing the harmful effects of stress. My preferred method is breathing techniques because they're so simple and effective. But those are just some basic elements of healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
The more preparation you have, the more guidance you have from people doing it, the more likely you are to have positive experiences that have lasting effects. So they aren't quick fixes. By the way, that's a general problem. Integrative medicine relies a lot on lifestyle change, as I said. But when you talk to patients about making lifestyle changes, like changing your diet or starting an exercise routine, many, many people just want a pill. It doesn't require work. It doesn't take time. And that's, you have to be able to convince people that in the long run, it is better to rely on these other methods, which hold up over time, rather than a pharmaceutical, which may have a lot of downsides and will fail you over time.
Yeah.
But I think that's absolutely true of psychedelics. Again, this is another, I don't think we have enough research here, but I am quite sure that dependence on devices is changing brain function and structure, especially in kids.
Yeah.
And I don't think we even know the full extent of this.
I was working in politics, and I was a filmmaker, and I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I was going through the motions of relationships, and I was never really one who was set up for a traditional relationship. I was really focused on changing the world and doing something that was going to help people. And first that was through politics, and then I made a film about politics, and I loved talking to people and telling stories. And through that, I've always been like, and I think growing up, I grew up in a home where my parents didn't stay married. I went through there was a few divorces and marriage and divorces. So marriage wasn't really held on in a high regard for me. And so I thought, well, I I would do like connection and relationships. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. I'm not going to put this pressure on myself to find the one. I'm really going to try to support myself and find a career that I love. And along the way, if a relationship works, that would be fantastic. But I kept finding myself getting into relationships with men that were wonderful men in the beginning, and the sex was fun, meaning it was satisfying. And what I've come to find out is the honeymoon phase is the honeymoon phase for a goddamn reason.
Right.
It's a biological condition that lasts 6 months to 2 years.
Right.
In every relationship, like the most loving people, it's just going to take a little bit of work to keep it hot, to keep it going, to keep it fresh. But no one was talking about that back then. So I just thought, here I am with this wonderful man, and it's been about 6 months, 2 years, like clockwork. And I thought, how do you have sex with one person for the rest of your life? This isn't as interesting anymore. I'm not as hot for him. The relationship, and at the time, I didn't know about that relationships take work, and that you can work on sex and you can work on communication and intimacy, and that having bad sex, and to me, that just meant like I didn't have high desire anymore. I wasn't really attracted to him anymore. He felt like my best friend, which was great, but it's really not that hot. And I just thought, well, that must mean the relationship's over. Time to move on, because how can I endure this forever? Like, right? So I kept getting into these patterns. And then it was about like really, when I started this podcast about 18 years ago, it was like 2005. And I thought, well, you know, every time you do something creative and artistic, you have to be fully passionate about it, or you can't, like, I want to be interested in this. I thought, I want to get to the bottom of sex and relationships, because maybe I'm missing something. Like maybe there's a secret. There's a secret to having sex where you want to have sex all the time with the same person. You're both having pleasure and orgasms, and you're communicating well, and you've learned how to do life together. Because there are, even though half of marriages end in divorce, there are some happy people.
Other half, right?
Like, what are they doing? Like, what I want to know, and I'm going to bring them into this podcasting thing, and start talking to them just on audio, so we can get, because like I knew it was like there's an anonymity to that, and I thought, what could I find out? And so that was how I got into this. And I was not the expert. I was really just had open ears and open heart. And I'm like, what? And I started asking people. Like the first time I did this podcast was in San Francisco, where I was living. And I invited like 10 people over. All my like gay, straight, married, single, dating online, married for 20 years. I started asking them. And I thought after that first day, I started getting some answers. But I also realized this is we all need this information. There's something here. And I started on the path of the podcast, Sex with Emily. Cool. That's how I started. And then I went to grad school and got a doctorate in human sexuality. And that was the whole path. There is no talk about pleasure when it comes to sex. In fact, it's don't have sex. Wait till you are married. It's only for procreation, actually.
Yes.
Don't have sex at all. And if you do have sex, you might get pregnant or get STDs or an STI. Yeah. So it's fear-based.
Or burn in hell.
Literally burn in hell. And if you masturbate, you're going to grow hair in your palms.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So everything we're told about sex is shameful, wrong, don't do it. Zero information about pleasure. So then you go to have sex, you're like, well, I know it's this like secret thing that I've been told I shouldn't want to do and shouldn't have to do, but I want to do it because I've been told that I shouldn't have to do it. Now I'm doing it, but like, it's just so confusing. So pleasure. Yeah. This whole talk about pleasure, and this is all, so then my mission has become on the planet after I realized this, is get people to prioritize pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. Like where in our life, because also here's the thing about pleasure, is that pleasure is it's so conditional. Like we think like, oh, I don't deserve pleasure unless I check these 10 things off the list, unless I work out today, that I can have dessert, unless I whatever. And I do. And so pleasure is productive, actually. So what I talk about in my book too is that it's like pleasure is productivity. When we restrict pleasure, we're going to be less productive. But if you can find ways to weave it into your life, like I actually have like pleasure principles where I look at my life and I say, okay, what am I doing this week for me? And I look at it and I'll say, because I then have a list of things that I know that like are going to be those joyful moments. And it could be like seeing a friend for lunch, going for a walk, getting a massage, nature, usually something to do with nature or something. And I'm like, where is that coming? Where is that going to be worked into this week? Because I was just so tired of so much of my life being about work and other things, and more pleasure in your life allows your body to be relaxed more, your nervous system to be calmer and more open to intimacy and pleasure and connection. Right. Talk to your partner about sex ever, and you grew up in a place where it just wasn't okay, or the two of you just have never talked about it, it's going to be really hard to continue to connect and be interesting to each other and have great sex. Or if you haven't acknowledged, your own challenges around confidence or around your body, around asking for what you want in bed. If you haven't learned to ask for what you want, which again, most of us haven't, it's holistic. So that's what I lay out in the book, all these different pillars that people can kind of look at and go, okay, well, I could try to. And so I kind of cycle them through them too. And you don't get to a place where you're actually like, I have reached this level of intelligence and I'm there. It's an ongoing process. It's like health. You're never like, I am fit for life. Like, this is it. I'm done. Now I can go learn to, speak French or something. Like, I'm done. Check off health. It's like sex is like, it's constantly like, I'm constantly looking at like because I know that it's important too to be sexual and to be connected. And sex isn't only about orgasms. I want to say that it does. Orgasms are fantastic. And if you haven't learned yet, it's like, we'll figure it out. We can talk about it. But also it's like intimacy. It's connection with my partner. Like sometimes I know that there's nights where I'm like, I'm not going to be ready for sex right now, but I know that you want it. So like, what could we do to like, maybe you could masturbate and I could do something, or I can like watch you, or I could take care of myself in sexual situations, or maybe we both give each other massages and it's not about sex, it's about connection. So I'm going to give you a 15-minute massage and you're going to give me one. So I guess it's more of expanding your definition of what intimacy is and taking the pressure off ourselves to always be ready for sex, and then to look at all these areas of your life that are contributing. Because even for me, so I'm saying like there's times where I'm like, maybe I'm feeling just more stressed and I know that I'm not going to be as turned on, or maybe I haven't talked about something with my partner. Maybe I've known this too. Self-knowledge is knowing that like, if the house is a mess, if it's freezing in the house, it's messy, the dishes aren't put away, my bed's unmade, I'm not going to be in the mood for sex either. So like, I'm like, that's what, so now it's not a mystery. Like, are they mad at me? Is it this? It's like, no, I literally now look around my environment and I know all the things that are happening. And this is what I teach people and talk about a lot, is like, get to troubleshoot your own intimacy and your own relationship so it's not so mysterious. Because with health, you could go see somebody, you could go work out, you could talk to a nutritionist, you could exercise, you could eat healthy. But with sex, I try to take the mystery of it and help people figure out like, oh, okay, I can figure out the things that are going to help me. Everyone has the things they don't like about their body. That's why I talk about like body. Like, I don't think you do love your body, but how about just be neutral about your body? Like, my body's like okay today. And I think that the more confident you are with a partner, like I feel like we have I just want people to know, like, no one is looking. If someone is with you on a date or having sex with you, they're not thinking like, I can't believe her left boob is bigger than her right boob, or she's got like, not at all.
They're so pumped that you're having sex with them.
They're so psyched. They're like, we are here.
Here we are.
Nobody. And I realized all the things I used to worry about, like, really nobody matters. It really is about us feeling comfortable. It's because my other part of that exercise is saying masturbate. If you guys don't want to masturbate, like, get naked and just look at yourself in front of the mirror. Like, get comfortable being naked with yourself, but also like, how do you explain that? The signs would be somebody who's if you feel that you're with somebody that it's not you, but like, they're making you feel like you have to cover up or you can't be yourself, like, not a good sign. Right. Like, that's just, and you want somebody who's comfortable, like, tell them, like, how important is sex to you? Like, ask them those questions. Would you be willing to have conversations about sex? Because I can't tell you, Rachel, how many people call into my show and they're like, well, my wife, I'm wondering why she won't want to, if she'll ever, why she has never initiate sex. And I'm like, okay, well, have you ever talked to her about it? Oh no, I could never talk. We've been together 15 years. This is the first I've ever talked about my sex. It might be time. Yeah. It might be time. So like, let's start to realize that like nobody is comfortable with these conversations, and that like you want somebody who says like, I can have a conversation about sex. So I would ask them sooner than later and say, would you be comfortable having sex being something that we talk about? Because I think it's important to have a growth mindset around it. Like, that's how you know if they like shame you or they make you feel weird, like, trust that.
The Rachel Hollis podcast is produced by me, Rachel Hollis. It's edited by Andrew Weller and Jack Noble. There's a revolutionary bra brand so confident it will change your life, they let you wear it risk-free for 60 days. Evelyn and Bobby is changing the game with their patented wireless replacement designed to support, smooth, and flatter an inclusive range of bodies up to a K-cup. Wear it, wash it, put it to the test. If it's not the most comfortable, supportive, and flattering bra you've ever worn, you'll get your money back. No questions asked. Go to evelynbobby.com/Rachel for $20 off your first bra. It's time to play ball. My son has been working with his baseball team since the fall, and we are officially in baseball season. So if you're a mama like me and you got to stock up on all the sporting gear, now is the time. Academy Sports and Outdoors has the gear that you need, and you can bring it home for less. Gear up for baseball, softball, and t-ball with essentials from Easton, Rawlings, and Wilson at Academy. Academy offers free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup if you're like me and you forgot to get the equipment in time. Swing by your local store or shop academy.com today and get ready to hit it out of the park.